Hello, everyone, and welcome back to River City Girls 2. So, we're on a hunt to free the school from the mind-controlling food, I guess. So, we're still doing that.
Did they say what kind of food it is? Like, is it...
No, just that it's from the chef guy from the Yakuza.
Because
It's always the goulash.
The goulash? What high schooler would willingly eat goulash?
Apparently quite a few of them.
What?
Okay, you can't see my eyebrow skeptically raising to the sky several meters above my face, but... Alright, I guess. I don't even know what goulash even looks like. Hold on.
The question is it more or less appealing in black and white?
Oh, it's just a soup. It's like... All of the Google images that I'm looking at, it just looks like...
It's like a stew of some sort, right?
Like that Campbell's Chunky soup that you'd see in the supermarket. Only I'm looking at it on Google, so it probably looks less appetizing in real life.
Now, this is one of those things that, like, you know, high schools feature pretty heavily in anime. I don't think that's a secret. But one of the things that you rarely ever see is their cafeteria.
I think that's because Japan does lunch differently than the United States. If I remember correctly, it's much more common for kids to bring their own lunch in Japan. And I mean, like, people do bring lunch here in the States, obviously.
It's very common to portray Japanese high schoolers as bringing bento lunches or else buying some kind of bread product from the school store. And when I say bread product, keep in mind that I'm including such Japan-only things as, like, a bread thing with a noodle dish baked inside of it. So, more of a meal, except in bread form.
Yeah, but I could be wrong here because I'm not Japanese, but I think, like, the very American sort of wait in a line in the cafeteria, get some sort of slop put on your plate, and then...
In my experience, it's more often than not some kind of prepackaged prepared meal that they just have to heat up there. But I will admit, I did go to a very public school.
My mom would always be like, Ted, why aren't you eating the fruit they have at school? It's free and good for you. And I'm like, yo, what I want to eat is brown bananas, mushy oranges with the peel already starting to come apart, and apples that will literally fall apart if you put the slightest amount of pressure on them. Yeah, that sounds delicious, Mom. I'll happily eat that. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to eat the chicken patty, which, although covered entirely in preservatives, at least won't fall apart when I bite it.
The preservatives are what make them last long enough to reach the students. I'm pretty sure food storage standards at a public school cafeteria are not great. If you were, like, at a relatively well-funded, like, semi-private school, you'd probably get some better lunches now.
Yeah, but, you know, God for, you know, considering how much money the school system doesn't spend on food, like, the fact that it's taken this long for the idea of free lunches to even sort of kind of maybe a little bit become a common thing in the United States is baffling to me. Like, I think Massachusetts just started a free lunch program for kids like a year or so back. And hopefully more schools will do that because kids should get to eat. I hope that's not a controversial opinion, that kids should be able to eat food.
It was very common in California, so I kind of forget sometimes that it's not common elsewhere.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Yeah, no,
it was super common where I grew up.
On the other hand, California's living expenses in general are like, they terrify me every time I glance at the numbers. So
yeah, I'm not about $7 for a gallon of gas, but you know, you take the good with the bad.
Well, I mean, gas is one thing, rent is another. All of that stuff is just kind of like, I look at the numbers and I'm just like, oh my god, how does anyone ever live there long enough to get a job?
Millennials, take any debt you can in order to go to school. Also, millennials, why don't you have a house yet? Gosh, you're ruining the economy.
Wait, is it the millennials saying that, or the millennials it's being said to? What generation?
I was
are we on?
imagining that the millennials were being told that because I don't know what millennial even has a house to be able to tell a Gen Zer to buy a house. Because you see, the phrase that people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones only applies if you can afford the mortgage on a glass house.
You know, somehow I think the glass house would be more expensive than an actual house. There'd be some kind of like special artisan premium on that. Anyway, we're down in the boiler room. This school has a boiler room, so I guess this is the school from fucking Silent Hill.
Yeah, you gotta have a basement as creepy as fucking possible to offer the true high school experience.
The true high school experience. I'm not even sure if my high school had a basement.
Yeah, because if there was one, there would be rumors that it was haunted or there was a serial killer down there. Because there probably would be.
Wait, now that I'm actually like thinking back to my high school, it's been almost a couple decades now. Holy shit. It did have a basement. I know it does because the basement had the old gym in it. The school had like a gym that we used regularly, which was more recently built, and it had an older, smaller gym that was down in like a basement area, and I think it was used for like maybe some clubs or something. But
putting the gym in the basement is a brave move.
Definitely a choice.
Yeah, because I don't know if the rest of the school wants to be smelling high school locker room.
Well, it was also like a really wide building, so it's just like the basement of 1/3 of the building. Most of the school was just like on one floor, spread out across two buildings that were built at separate times and had like they were on like slightly different levels. So somewhere around the middle of the building, you'd have to walk down some stairs to get to the rest of the first floor. Man.
Yeah, this minigame takes us an embarrassingly long amount of time to figure out.
What are you supposed to do exactly?
You're supposed to hit the dial, but only in a certain direction.
Yeah, you have to get it going so that it like tightens up.
Yeah, the feedback is really poor though.
But yeah, are you actually hitting it there? Because I didn't see like any of the dials moving or anything. Like, oh, now it kind of looks like it's moving.
That's why it took us so long to figure out.
Yeah, there's not like a lot of feedback.
It looks like the hitbox is super precise, to be honest.
It is.
Yep, we definitely have good excuses, and we're just oblivious.
It could be a little bit of both.
Fair.
This is one of those cases where being in multiplayer is definitely a boon because one player can just focus on the task at hand while the other one takes down the enemies for them.
So, in terms of gameplay, assuming you're all playing optimally, yes. However, my experience with these sorts of games is that I'm not paying attention to what the characters are saying because I'm dicking around with my friends. And because of that, like, I would completely miss what we're actually supposed to do here. That's just my experience with this sort of situation, though.
Yeah, unfortunately, River City Girls is a game that requires you to pay a certain amount of attention to what's being said in the dialogue. It's good dialogue, so it's not like really a punishment, but if you're in that multiplayer mood where you're just rushing ahead to keep the game flow up, you're gonna miss things.
Yeah, it's not like you're playing like the Simpsons arcade or the X-Men arcade game or whatever.
Fortunately, the map in this game is actually quite helpful. Like, if you know what to look for, all of the important rooms have a different color to them. There's little exclamation marks for quests and stuff.
I'm sure there is also a dialogue log, so you can go back and check what's said, but that's a little difficult to do in the middle of a combat situation.
Yes, very true, when people are trying to punch you in the face.
Especially since pausing the game doesn't pause the game in this game.
Yeah, it's basically an escort mission when your partner is trying to figure out, hey, what is the quest?
I like how this repair guy has a juice box in his overalls pocket, by the way.
He's also a vastly different art style from everybody else. Like, this guy looks straight out of a Cartoon Network cartoon.
I feel like Thummy is from one of the earlier games, but I can't quite put my finger on which one.
Let me look this up. River City Girls Thummy. Okay. He's a boiler mechanic. His voice. Doesn't say anything about him being from something else. Actually, it says this is his first appearance.
Oh,
okay then. So Way4 just wanted to make a guy look like that then.
I guess so.
I can relate.
Alright, well.
Unfortunately, it's a lock screen, so you have to beat these people up first.
You know, thank God that beat-em-ups, modern beat-em-ups, have prevented enemies from being knocked off the screen. Like, this is something that you'll see in every modern day beat-em-up, is there's some sort of gimmick or explanation as to why enemies won't be knocked off the screen and you have to wait for them to come back. That's easily the worst part of any beat-em-up from the actual 90s.
Yeah, I like to imagine that the chains are actually there in universe. They just show up and just slam your opponents into them, almost like what do you call it in boxing when you knock them into the or wrestling the
ring?
The rings all on the side, roping them or something.
Why did we have to mess with the boiler?
Because you have to turn off Ken's fire traps.
Yeah, there's like this huge like wall of fire somehow on the 5th floor guarding Ken.
We're not dead. No more fire traps, and no more Thummy. Hey, I kinda liked him. Let's go find Ken. I bet he's upstairs.
Time
Okay.
to finally get our revenge on Ken.
Can you go down here before finding out that there's fire upstairs and do it beforehand, or do you have to go up, see that there's an obstacle, and then go back down?
I think you have to go up first.
Yeah, this was backtracking. We actually went through this part of the school last episode as well. You go all the way up to the top, then all the way back up to the bottom, and then back up to the top again.
It does sound tedious when you just say it like that, but on the other hand, I do kind of appreciate the effect that that sort of meandering progression gives to a game.
It's not inherently a bad thing. It just depends on what sort of game you're playing.
It works if the gameplay is fun.
Yeah.
The thing about just going straight from A to B at all times is that, you know, when you're getting anywhere in real life, and I do mean anywhere, that's not how you do it. You don't generally just have one direction to go at all times. You're constantly going back and forth between one thing and another. So having at least a token amount of backtracking or meandering in the area design of a game will give it a more naturalistic feeling in terms of how you're getting from one place to another. The trick is to do that without making it tedious. Because it is tedious in real life, and you don't want to necessarily emulate that.
Yeah, I really appreciate any game that makes the areas feel like a real place. And by a real place, I don't mean like realistic, but like you know, my go-to example is like if you go into the factory level in Donkey Kong Country, that's not a factory. That's a bunch of conveyor belts and saw blades. And I mean, and that's fine. It's a platforming challenge. It's still plenty fun. But with that said, it is always nice when there's at least a token effort to, you know, make it feel like, oh, even in cartoon worlds, there's some, you can imagine this being a thing that these characters would actually need or do.
Yeah.
And part of that is, and that's a lot easier to do in opener games where, like Lewis said, you do have to backtrack at least a token amount.
Yeah. This is a weird example to bring up in the context of a beat 'em up, but, you know, a lot of people complain about Final Fantasy 13, and a lot of people also jump to Final Fantasy 13's defense, especially these days, because we finally reached that era where
Final Fantasy 13 is a retro game.
Yeah, where we finally reached the point where a lot of people who grew up with it are starting to speak out and defend their childhood nostalgia. But, you know, there's a reason people complain specifically about the linearity in that game. Apart from it just being repetitive as all hell, most of the game's design can accurately be summed up as a hallway. And the thing about that is that, like, it's not just a problem of it being linear, it's a problem of it being unnaturally linear in a lot of places, where you're constantly just going in one direction, except for your little branch offs to grab a treasure chest or some shit. Some areas do it better than others, but for the most part, every area is the Mihen High Road, and when every area is the Mihen High Road, what you get is a lot of areas that don't feel natural at all.
Yeah. Like, I'm trying to think of a good example, but in many games, like, there's plenty of linear games where it doesn't feel like it's a hallway, you know?
Yeah.
I was going to say Crash Bandicoot, but Crash Bandicoot literally does feel like a hallway. But it's certainly a much more interesting one.
Well, Crash Bandicoot is really just like Donkey Kong Country turned on its side. I think that's like the exact comparison Nitro Rad's review used for it. Donkey Kong Country, but that way.
Yeah, I'm trying to this is what's annoying about becoming old and not remembering shit anymore. I can't think of super easy to remember examples. Oh, Mirror's Edge. That's a game like we've actually done on this channel. Mirror's Edge is a very linear game. It's not a hallway, and it doesn't necessarily feel like
it gives the illusion of taking place in an environment that's more naturalistic than the game design necessarily is, because you frequently have to stop and figure out which way you're even supposed to go.
Exactly.
Even if you only have to stop for a few seconds to, like, look around and see which door glows red at you, you're still looking around at an environment that gives the illusion of offering the player character multiple options of directions they could go to escape, and having to see the character pick the direction they're going, even if the choice from your end is a little easier than it would be in universe.
Right, games that are actually too open can get confusing, but a good illusion that kind of subconsciously directs you, like the whole classic Valve games have a light, you know, where you're supposed to go next, and you feel like you're choosing that just by fiat, but in reality, you know, they're subconsciously directing you where you're supposed to go.
Yeah. And, you know, there are arguments for different ways of doing that, but the main point is that, you know, you give the impression of a character in a world deciding which way they want to go, even if the game itself only gives you one real option.
Yeah, linear isn't necessarily bad. It's just a matter.
Everything must be open world now.
Yeah, it's like, and honestly, like, it's a good point where having a linear game means that you can be very, very focused, which is awesome in a lot of ways. When you know exactly where your player character is going to go and do, like, you can craft a really, really good experience for them. With that said, craft, I don't necessarily know if walking in a straight line and then once every 20 minutes turning slightly to the left and finding a treasure chest is a great experience.
It's
Final Fantasy 13.
It's not. It would be a better experience, to be fair, in Final Fantasy 13's case if there were a bit more variety along the way. Because the other problem Final Fantasy 13 has is that it gives you basically nothing to do along the way. Who are these two, by the way?
Lackey's Kenbot.
Right.
Yeah, they defenestrated us back at the beginning of the game.
Oh. Guys.
They don't have teamwork.
They lack the power of friendship. Yeah, good luck with that, Ken.
Dab.
Get dabbed on.
Thanks for the thumbnail.
That was cheating. A sucker punch.
It was a dab to your face that you could have seen coming a mile away.
Just wait till my father hears about this. He will not be pleased.
With you, maybe. Yeah, what a pathetic son.
I was about to say.
Stop your plan.
So this was like the big bad guy the whole time, right?
Anyone ate that toxic
No, Sabu is.
Okay.
Sabu, the head of this this Yakuza clan. Yeah, Sabu is the main villain of River City Girls Zero, the guy who tries to get Kunio and Ricky framed for murder and thrown in prison. But
Yeah, this is a classic like Legend of Zelda moment. You think Ken's the big bad, but it was Ganondorf all along.
Oh,
no,
wow.
the opening cutscene makes it very clear that their father is the main bad guy. He's the guy who punches his way out of prison, and everything.
True, but we have literally not seen him or heard from him since.
Yeah.
So we gotta leave. But we'll see you all next part when we do that. Bye.